Hello, my name is Mark Holthe. I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer and ex-immigration officer practicing in the beautiful province of Alberta, Canada. I'm the host of the Canadian Immigration Podcast and the founder of the Canadian Immigration Institute. This is the second video in a series of 3 videos I prepared to share helpful information with you on the Canadian express entry immigration process. In this video, I'm going to share with you the answer to one of the most common questions I get from people when applying for entry into the express entry process. In fact, I get this question so often, I've become completely overwhelmed with the number of people seeking guidance. Because it's impossible for me to be able to answer every single person's question, I decided what better way to help people than to create a video that can be shared with everyone at the same time. So that's what I did. Here's the question. What do I do if my employer will not give me a properly worded reference letter for express entry? Is there anything I can use instead of the reference letter to support my skilled work experience? All right. This most definitely is one of the top questions I get. Let me try to answer it for you. Do everything you can to get that darn letter. It is critical that you pull out all stops, because any of the tips that I give you next are completely up to, basically it leaves it up to an immigration officer as to whether or not they are going to be willing to accept it. And for anyone who has had anything to do with express entry, you will know that these immigration officers are downright cruel. And the moment you do not have a document or cannot provide a document that was originally requested in the form that they want it to be received in, you are leaving yourself open for an application to get returned for being incomplete. And it happens time and time again. So first off, do everything you can to get that letter. Next, if you can't, provide a very detailed written explanation of why you can't get the letter. So that is what you're going to be including. But that's just the cover letter. You are next going to include this detail within that letter. You're going to explain why the letter, or at least the reference letter that you're seeking, is not available, or why it's deficient. In other words, it doesn't have all of those components that we talked about in the last video. You are going to include every piece of information that IRCC requests to be included in your reference letter. You're going to explain it in this letter. You're going to talk about any company contact information that's available, the address, telephone number, and email of anyone you may still know there. You're going to make sure that you list all the positions you held with the company. You're going to include job details for each listed position. And these are all of the pieces of information that are to be included in that reference letter. Job title, duties, responsibilities, job status, the dates you worked for the company, number of hours worked per week, annual salary and benefits. So you're going to include all of those within your explanation letter. Now, once you've got that, you need to try and substantiate that. You need to try and provide evidence to support it. So what are you going to do? Well, open your mind. Think of every possible way that you can to provide evidence and prove that you actually worked in the job that you worked in and that you performed the duties you performed. So let's think back. Do you have an employment contract? Maybe there was a job offer letter when you were originally offered the job. Pull that out. Were there previous reference letters that you had to get for other purposes? Let's say you're opening up a bank account, or you're applying for a bank loan, for a mortgage, car loan, or some other financing. Maybe you needed to provide some kind of a reference letter for that would detail your work experience for that particular employer. Do you have any pay slips or pay stubs? What about tax documents? Do you have any records of employment? Or in Canada and the US, we have our T4s and W2s. Do you have any of those? All right. Now I want you to think about reference letters. Can you get a reference letter from a supervisor or colleagues that you worked with? Now, these need to be notarized. So make sure that if you do get these statements from from previous supervisors or other work colleagues, that you get this document notarized. And in the reference letter, you want to include some of the following information: a statement that they worked with you and witnessed you performing your job duties. They can also attest to the time period that they worked with you, your title or position, the hours that they worked with you each week, or any other statement that can confirm what CIC, or in this case IRCC, has required you to provide within the reference letter. Now let's think about some other documents. Do you have any performance appraisals or reviews? Do you have promotion letters or others confirming your position? What about letters from previous immigration applications for other countries? Did you have to provide them for other countries? So you can see from this list here that we're trying to expand our mind. We're trying to think of every possible avenue. But this is just a short list of some of the things that you can include, and make sure that you pull out all the stops. Do the very best you can to get the letter. If your letter is deficient or not complete, then rely on all of these other suggestions as possibilities. But in the end, it is completely up to the officer who is reviewing your application to determine whether or not they're going to accept it as sufficient proof of your work experience. And if they don't, it could result in your application getting returned. But this is all you can do in the circumstances. All right. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. In our next Express Entry tip, for video number 3, we are going to cover this, which is probably the second most common question. How do I establish proof of funds? And what documentation do I need to include if I personally don't have enough money in my own bank account? So in other words, if you have to rely on family or other people. That's what we're going to cover in video number 3. So tune in and good luck as you're trying to navigate this crazy Express Entry world.